And we are recording. It should prompt you to confirm that you're okay with me recording, or at least it used to. I'm not sure about this most recent update. Okay. Got a few more people popping in. So let me see how this is going to work with it being in browser, because I do have a specific, please work. Ta-da! Can one of you confirm that you can see my Ward 12 Town Hall agenda?
I can see it.
You can't see it?
I can.
Oh, you can? Okay. Whew. I was worried there for a second. I was like, is this going to mess up? There should be a, well, I've gone done now. Should be a way to do it full screen. Where's view? Ta-da. Not the best. That's okay. And I will scroll down. And now I have to scroll back over because we've got people waiting. Oh, it does take a village, and that's okay. So without further ado, allow me to get started. And if at any point anyone has any questions, please just unmute yourself and interrupt me, because it's not interruption, it's a conversation. So there's no worries about that. If any point you want me to clarify or so on and so forth, I might jump around a bit depending, but that is all right. I do have to pull up the message from Alderwoman Schweitzer and Martin regarding Carondelet Park. So let me do that right quick. As a disclaimer, there's no part of Carondelet Park that falls within Ward 12. It is everything south of Carondelet Park that is Ward 12, with the exception of the Loughborough Commons, as well as I think 3 or 4 houses on South Grand there, right? South Grand and Loughborough. For whatever reason, when the maps were last redrawn, those 4 or so houses were very specifically looped into Ward 11. I don't know. I door knock them all the same and check on them all the same. So for all intents and purposes, I mean, they're not Ward 12, but they're still my neighbors. And anything I do on South Grand affects them. So Sarah Wood Martin and I of 11 have a very good relationship and collaborative relationship. If she sees something in Ward 12, she lets me know, but contacts the right person, and likewise in Ward 11. So the Carondelet Park update. I've been receiving quite a few communications about the closed entryways into Carondelet Park. They're not across the entire park itself, but rather mostly along Loughborough there. And we've been getting praise and also complaints about that. So Alderwoman Schweitzer of 13 and Alderwoman Martin of 11 met with the Parks Commissioner today, Kim Hagley, and they have decided that there's still, so opening the roads to cars of Carondelet Park is still in discussion, because they want to make sure that the paths are accessible while creating more open space that's available to foot traffic if possible. They have allocated $100,000 to repair the bridge at Horseshoe Lake, $125,000 to path repair, which is for the entire park. Certain paths, especially biker walking paths, periodically need to be replaced. We have the same issue in Willmore Park. And the path repair is going to be over a few years, so that's not going to be immediate. Sometimes these projects, due to funding limitations, have to be done on a fiscal year basis. $80,000 is going to the creation of a work plan for the Lyle House. Now, the Lyle House is an interesting situation because it's actually the first wood-framed building home in St. Louis City. And the land that it sits on was actually purchased directly from the Spanish. So it is one of the oldest buildings in St. Louis City as well. It is in very good condition, all things considered. That is the project that I'm assisting with, sort of just because we're south of Carondelet Park, so it does affect, it will affect my neighbors and my constituents. So the $80,000 is just for the creation of a work plan, getting a firm to come in, kind of get estimates, an idea of what can be done with it. And then also for the formulation of a committee. And then $250,000 is going towards work that will be needed, that we understand it needs at the moment, once the plan is complete. And we have another guest, one moment. Okay. So the Lyle House is a very big project. It is a preservation and cultural preservation project that, again, I'm assisting with somewhat tangentially. And that's about the extent of my dealings with Carondelet Park. They are waiting to see if they need to spend money on aeration for the Horseshoe Lake. That recently crept up into Willmore Park, which I'll get to in a moment. And if anyone in the community wants to get involved with the efforts regarding Lyle House, which is, again, a historic preservation project, you can email Alderwoman Schweitzer or Alderwoman Martin or myself, and we can connect you to that committee that's formulating. So the goal is to not only get Lyle House back to a functioning and working order, but to make it a sort of cultural center or give it a use to the community. The goal is not whatsoever to keep it from the community at large's access, but rather to make it a place for everyone to use. And there's a few ideas floating around how we might do that. But so that's the update on Carondelet Park. I will try to be more on top of getting updates from the neighboring wards about projects that will affect the neighbors here in Ward 12 or so on. That does lead me to Willmore Park. So Willmore Park, as many of us know, has been having a mass fish death issue. The Missouri Department of Conservation reached out and said, hey, we want to give you a heads up. We, being the Missouri Department of Conservation, sent diseased catfish stock. So there was an issue with this stock of catfish from the Missouri Department of Conservation hatcheries. It's not limited only to Willmore Park. It's the hatchery itself had issues, so anyone that received fish from them. And they told us to expect more fish death as the weather got warmer. They said, you know, it's just bad fish, sadly. It turns out that it's also bad aerators in both ponds. So when you go to Willmore Park or any city park that has a major body of water that has fish in it specifically, so a sort of living body of water, you'll see these sort of jets off to the side that jet water, a stream of water into the pond. And those are aerators. It's adding oxygen, it's keeping water movement, so on and so forth. There's various other things that they do with the ponds as well. If you ever have your Christmas tree picked up by the city, it's ending up in a city pond. They will drop the Christmas trees into the bottom because it helps add nutrients, it helps add shelter, and overall it's just good for the ecological system. The aerators very much do the same. And it turns out that Willmores were broken. So those will have to be replaced. That does come from my park budget. I don't yet have an estimate from the Board of Public Services or from Parks as to what that's going to cost. And I'm not necessarily thrilled that I'm taking a hit to my Willmore Park budget for the aerators, but it is a necessary capital improvement. They have to be fixed or we're going to see much more fish death. So on a lighter note, we do have the Missouri Department of Conservation, the Missouri Botanical Gardens, myself, Parks, a state rep, a few other organizations that are all coming together next week to actually tour Willmore Park to see what we can do about the problem areas, such as the area that constantly floods into a marshland. How can we work with that environment instead of working against it? We're looking at implementing a new sports feature. That is not the pickleball courts. The pickleball courts are complete. They are open. It makes my heart leap with joy every time I see people using them. And boy, do they get used. All I ask is that they don't wear out the paint because we just painted. But if that's the cost of, and we even have a pickleball count in the chat there. However, if wearing out the paint so soon means that the courts get used, I am more than okay with that. We do have another sports related activity that we're looking to put into Willmore that would help to make this shining gem of South City all the more shinier. There are some lights out on the court, the pickleball and tennis courts. Who do we contact about that? You can contact myself or Parks, but since you've let me know here, I'm going to jot down a quick note that I need to look into the lights, the tennis court lights. And that's actually an excellent example of how, while I do walk around through the neighborhood and while I do drive around the neighborhood, if there's an issue, I've probably missed it or I'm probably unaware. I'm usually the last to find out in City Hall about things. So please, please, please drop me an email, a text, a call. Just say, hey, the lights are out, or hey, our alleyway collapsed, or so on and so forth. And we'll address it, absolutely. But 9 times out of 10, I hear about things first from comments like that in a meeting like this. So just reach out. I'm always available. Tennis court lights out. And I will bring that up in that meeting as well that we have. We're also looking to bring in movie nights. St. Francis Park is doing movie nights because they're in constant competition with us, because they have to be. We're the best park in South City. But I hope to bring a few other things as well. We have got an organization looking to bring in a farmer's market. So we're working with that. We're looking to bring in more community events in Willmore. And if there's one lasting legacy I want in my 2 years in office, I want it to be really bringing Willmore back in a much more sustainable effort. I think I see Katie typing a comment. Okay. Yes, well, and the farmer's market, so that's in its very most nascent stages. We're getting the proposal and sort of the overall kind of plan for it this week, hopefully by the end of the week. So we're both very excited. Usually parks won't even really consider farmers markets, but again, there's no other community event that's consistent in Willmore Park, except for the disc golf. I'm gonna have an absolute fit if any other park takes disc golf from me. We're looking to expand that too into Old St. Marcus Cemetery Park. So old St. Marcus Park. And they've actually raised the funds for it themselves. So we're in conversations about that. That park does not have its own budget. That's just a neighborhood park. So the farmer's market is looking pretty good, and it's looking like we're going to be able to implement it eventually. There's some more ducks that we have to get in a row before that. And that was a Ward 12 resident who stepped up and said, hey, I want to do a farmer's market. And we said, you know what? I think that sounds great. And St. Francis doesn't have a farmer's market. So, I mean, I don't know, have fun with your movies. But just jesting, by the way, I have a little play fight going on with Carondelet and St. Francis, but it's not actually a real fight. So we have a Ward 12 official YouTube channel, which I would like to show you all right now. And it's gonna necessitate that I stop sharing and that I reshare. And that's okay. So here we have the Ward 12, Alderman Bill Stevens, Ward 12 YouTube channel. So whenever I host a Zoom meeting or a forum meeting, I record them so that I can subsequently add them here. And I can upload them for public recording purposes, but also for your convenience. For example, as this meeting goes on right now, the Housing and Urban Development Committee is still in session. And I've got several constituents who reached out and said, hey, Alderman, you know, I want to watch the town hall, but I'm in HUDs and, you know, I hate to pick and choose. Well, you don't have to pick and choose. So they will be recorded here, uploaded, and made available to the public. I'm still working on how to implement the Ward 12 open docs or open files folder that I'm making available to the public, but I can drop this link in the chat. So if you ever want to go back, you're like, what was Bill saying about this? You can go back, you can watch the videos and check it out and hold me accountable. So let me do a quick little change over here. Where'd my agenda go? Here's my agenda, and we're back to the agenda. So the ARPA stimulus funds and the buying bucks and that update. So currently we are debating the first $80 million, give or take, for direct relief to citizens. If you've heard of the Stimulus Advisory Board that the mayor's office founded, if you heard of sort of what's going on at the Board of Aldermen as it goes through its process of reviewing and essentially its budgetary process that they go through every year with the city budget. then you'll be aware that $80 million from the $517 or so million given to us by the federal government for relief funds is meant for direct relief to citizens. And we have to sort of divvy that up. We have to budget it to different areas and then disperse it. It's a game of doing it correctly and efficiently, but also doing it swiftly so that we can get the funds to people in a timely manner so that the citizens that need it now get it now. It's currently being discussed in HUDs as of today. So it got deferred to committee. And what that means is that legislatively, a board bill's been presented. It's Board Bill 2 officially. And it got sent to committee for discussion, for public comment, for so on and so forth. The committee will send it out of committee with a do pass or do not pass recommendation. Depending on which they go with, I believe they're going with a do pass recommendation at the moment. Or if it passes out of committee with a do pass, I should say, then it's presented to the full Board of Aldermen and just requires a majority. If it comes out of committee with a do not pass recommendation, then it comes in front of the Board of Aldermen and we need a 2/3 majority because a sub-governing body of the Board of Aldermen has recommended that it does not pass. That's the current situation with the city budget overall, separate from the Biden bucks. So our city budget, Board Bill 1, came out of Ways and Means Committee with a do not pass recommendation. So in order for us to formally pass the city budget, we need a 2/3 majority to approve it, to sort of override what is essentially a committee veto of sorts. However, in terms of the city budget, it automatically went into effect July 1st per law. So it's already in effect. It's a formality at this point where the Board of Aldermen sort of says yay or nay, but I mean, we're already operating from the current fiscal year 22 budget. So the initial $80 million for direct relief, such as rental assistance, mortgage assistance, so on and so forth, is currently still at the Board of Aldermen. And there is a timeline with that as well. There's a few timelines actually, so a few time limitations. For example, we have this Friday's meeting, the 9th, and then next Friday's meeting, the 16th, and then we go on summer recess until September. So we won't host any board meetings or any legislative roles, any legislative meetings. So I wanted to give everyone an update on that. There isn't currently a timeline. President Reed and the HUDs committee have retracted $5 million from one budget line and suggested that it be added to another budget line. Again, this is a very normal or expected sort of budgetary process. So, and the Board of Aldermen, so we think of the three branches of government as being that of like the three legs of a stool, right? You need all three to support the stool, which is the city. And as the legislative body, we essentially act as Congress. We're a unicameral Congress. We don't have a House and Senate. We just have the Board of Aldermen, but we're all legislators. And we also control the powers of the purse. We see that with the city budget. We see that with these $517 million. And we see that on an individual level as aldermen with ward capital budgets. So the power of the purse. I'm sorry if I'm if I'm joining on Miss Steele. So with that, I will head over to I'm going to skip down to 6, recent donations through the unaccounted expense fund. So every month I receive $350, not $350,000. That is for sure. $350 to put towards non-capital projects that are still relevant to my ward. 26 out of 28 aldermen have it as an unaccounted expense account, myself included, which means that it's just rolled over into my my last paycheck of the month. And so $350 extra in my paycheck. However, I tend to actually spend over that per month making donations or doing honorific things, such as when Alderman Larry Arnowitz passed away. $100 of that went to the purchasing of a memorial flag case. Alderman Arnowitz was a Marine, so he was buried at Jefferson Barracks. So that's what those funds sort of go to. Recently, I made a donation of $150. This month, I made a donation of $150 to the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. I've made donations to, I was slated to make a donation to Tower Grove Pride in order for them to secure additional security, which was a very last minute situation. I think they received a lump sum donation that covered it because they ultimately said that they no longer needed my donation, which is fine. So this month I've donated $150 to the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. I've made another donation that's currently not coming to mind. I just had an email come through. So I'm going to be better about reporting how I use those funds. It's essentially, it's akin to a per diem, but sort of a per monthum, if you will. So at the state legislature, they get $100 a day for various expenses. With this sort of monthly per diem, I can spend it on registrations, memberships to taxpayer-funded entities, travel costs for if I want to go to a conference, so on and so forth. I'm trying to localize it to, or keep it local to donations here in St. Louis, to not-for-profits or to small bits. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Hold on one second. Hey there, Mel. Apologize for that. Or May, sorry, May. I forgot to let someone in. So welcome, May. Welcome to the group. So public health update regarding COVID-19 and the Delta variant. The Delta variant has been detected in St. Louis City and County, and Missouri is still in the top 3 for both COVID-19 infections and also now the Delta variant. And there's also a Delta Plus variant as well. So there's actually 2 variants that are going around. I don't know if there's a variant of the variant or if it's just 2 side-by-side variants. However, the city of St. Louis has not issued, they have not issued a new mandate. However, they have issued a recommendation and a request to the citizenry to perhaps consider wearing masks in large mixed crowds where you don't know who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been. So if you're hanging out with friends on someone's back porch and you've all been vaccinated, you're fine. You know, if you go out to a bar or a restaurant or a movie theater, or maybe the Francis Park movie night, not saying anything, but it sounds like it's gonna be a crowd. And you're not sure if everyone there has been vaccinated, the city is merely asking that you consider wearing a mask for your safety and everyone else's. It is not yet a mandate. And I can't speak to whether or not the city will mandate anything in the future. That is a decision by the executive branch in tandem with the health department and whatnot. And we're working with the county as well. So we're now on the public health front working very closely with St. Louis County to present a united regional front. So it would be a huge favor to myself and to all of your neighbors in Ward 12 if you would just consider wearing a mask in mixed crowds, large intimate mixed crowds. If you can socially distance, you know, I believe that's safe enough. And it's just an added precaution, right? And if anyone needs help getting a vaccination or has questions about the vaccination, I'm happy to share my reports, my personal experiences. I'm happy to help arrange for you to receive one. This is vitally important. So please, for everyone's health and safety, consider wearing a mask or consider getting vaccinated. Okay, Kings Highway and Hampton traffic study updates. This is becoming an evergreen update on my part. The Hampton repaving should be completed by the end of June, is what Tom Oldenburg of 16 and myself were told. This does include a road diet going from 4 lanes down to 3. It is an implementation by the Hampton traffic study from 2019 or so. The documents of which I can email over to anyone that likes them. They'll also be in that open docs folder for Ward 12. There are various reasons why we're doing these road diets. The largest is traffic mitigation. It's to slow people down. But there's also added benefits such as providing more clearance when pulling out from alleys. So instead of having to pull out into an active lane of traffic, to see if you have clearance to pull out into an active lane of traffic, you'll now have more space to get that line of sight before you actually enter a lane of traffic. There's also going to be a center turning lane. So that should actually alleviate quite a bit of traffic backup issues with, people stopping in one lane or the other to make a right or left turn. We're doing the same with Kings Highway. Kings Highway has been paused for the moment to see if we can't get some infrastructure funds from the 517 million, because the federal government dictates that so much of it go to infrastructure. The Treasury Department dictates that specifically. So Kings Highway has been sort of paused. It's not a no, it's not yet. We're seeing it's the funding and seeing, can we fund the full project, which would be incredible. If we can't, we will be moving forward with the repaving, which it's time to do so anyway. Every 10 years on main arterial roadways, they need to be repaved. It will be repainted to 3 lanes down from 4, such as what we're doing with Hampton. And unique to Kings Highway, we are opting wards 12, 13, and 14 to update the sidewalk end caps to be ADA compliant, because we all felt that that wasn't something that we could bend on. When it comes to ADA compliance and accessibility, I mean, those are funds well spent, right? And I remember sitting in a meeting with Alderwoman Schweitzer, myself, and Alderwoman Howard of 12, 13, 14, discussing how are we going to pay, what are we paying for, sort of what are we a la carting, so on and so forth. And watching as my neighbor across the street navigated the sidewalks, and specifically stepping down from the sidewalk using her walker. And I don't think we can compromise on accessibility. It's the same reason why I spent $190,000 on the 50/50 sidewalk program in Ward 12 alone. So anyone who's put in for the 50/50 sidewalk program in the past 4 or 5 years, that's how behind the list was. You will be getting your sidewalk replaced and fixed. Because again, we cannot compromise on accessibility. So Kings Highway has been kind of paused. Hampton should be completed by the end of July. This is largely weather contingent. Funds had already been allocated for Hampton and had been allocated for Hampton for a while. That project was going to go through regardless if I was elected or not. But I did greenlight the project along with Tom Oldenburg. And Tom and I are going to revisit Hampton and Jameson, which is statistically a rather lethal intersection. We've had to, in the past 5 or so years, we had to airlift someone out of that intersection to a nearby hospital. It's dangerous for pedestrians, it is dangerous for road users, and I mean, I don't think safety is something that we can compromise on either. And I'm hoping to put in a crosswalk, because people constantly cross there, both across Jameson and across Hampton, to get to Willmore Park, because again, it's the best park in South City. Why wouldn't you try to get there? And it's just too dangerous doing it without a crosswalk. So we are looking to maybe fund that. And in general, with the Ward 12 capital, we're doing quite fine. This fiscal year, all of my line item budgets combined, some of which are dedicated budgets, such as to Willmore Park, but all budget items combined, budget lines combined, I had $1.28 million to work with. Now, $547,000 or so is Willmore Park only. So the $1.28 million is just what I have control over. That's my power of the purse. So after I made all the allocations to forestry and refuse and all the different divisions, we're still sitting at $505,000. So we still have $500,000 to put towards projects. That's my contingency fund. So with contingency funds, it's a bit of a gamble, right? Because situations like the 2 aerators in Willmore Park going out, okay, well, that can eat up a substantial amount of funding. But if we want to do a traffic study of, say, Carondelet Boulevard from Morgan Ford to 55, Well, we're not really going to feel that $75,000 hit just for the study because we have so much flexibility. Not every ward has that, so we're in a very good spot, and that's why I opted to pay, say, $190,000 for the 50/50 sidewalks. I am debating, and I'm always welcome to input, so I'm going to put this all to you, my neighbors. We still have about 435 street lamps in Ward 12 that need to be updated from sodium lamps, so the sodium arc lamps, to high efficiency LED lights. That's phenomenal because we're almost complete. We only have 435 street lights left. However, it would cost the ward about $80,000 to replace them. And it's not a pressing issue. It is energy efficient, it's greener, they last longer, the light pollution is less. It provides more illumination with less sort of bleeding of light, if you will. It's a less ambient light and more direct. So I'm welcoming feedback on that because I'm vacillating on, do I want to spend $80,000 to replace street lamps when the street lamps aren't broken? If one does break, they do replace them with the LED. So it's, that project's a little more vanity than not. But if we wanted new street lamps, absolutely, I'll pay for it. After all, it's your money, it's our taxpayer dollars. So I see some people typing, so I will take a brief pause. While you're typing, I'm going to check my this. And actually, I'm going to update. Oops. Okay. Katie said, I would vote for replacing them as they break. That's fine. That's fine. And even the lighting commissioner, so the sort of subdivision of streets and whatnot, in our budget meeting even said like, hey, this is your lowest priority, right? Like, do you not feel you have to put the 80,000 to it unless you want? So we can totally do that. And I can just keep ample funding in there to replace, 10 or so a year, however many they want. They still have residual funding from previous years. So that's fine by me. If anyone feels strongly otherwise, we can always discuss that. We'll even host a forum for it if we want. So let's see, I've done ARPA, I've done the donations, public health, Kings Highway did all of that. We've got the link to the YouTube channel. Okay, so this brings us to the medical marijuana dispensary and zoning. This is going to be a meaty part of the meeting. So I will take a second to pause and ask if anyone has any questions on the previous aforementioned items, or if anyone has any input, feel free to unmute yourselves. Anyone? Okay, no worries. You all can drop in and out as you like. Texting works too. So iPhone, I do see the question that you've put, what are the steps followed after the in-person meeting at the Hilltop? I will get to that in a moment, but first I do want to touch on the medical marijuana dispensary. So June 3rd, zoning announced to the public through a sign, through standard operating procedures, that there would be a conditional use hearing for a proposed medical marijuana dispensary at 7350 Gravois, which is the old Steak and Shake. The meeting slated for June 17th, 2021. By law, when they post it, they have to post it 2 weeks in advance of the meeting. And once they post a notification to the public about a hearing, be it a Board of Adjustments, be it Board of Public Services, be it, in this case, a conditional use hearing, the city is obligated by law to follow through with that. That was one of the numerous questions I had. Can zoning pause this process or delay the meeting so that we can meet with the applicants? And by law, they could not. However, we did still meet with the applicants. So we had the conditional use hearing on the 17th. I did spend those 2 weeks soliciting public comment and public testimony, stances, so on and so forth, by door knocking, by direct engagement, by email, phone call, or rather email, call, or text. If someone, I had a few people Facebook message me, which through the page is fine. You can always Facebook message me through my official page. because that's for public business. If you send me a message on Facebook, my personal profile, I have to redirect you to an official channel of communication because I can't conduct public business on my personal profile because it no longer will be a personal profile. It compromises my personal privacy in that it's anything that I do that's public business is subject to sunshine law, such as this meeting. So if you do reach out to me on Facebook through my personal profile, I will but gently redirect you to either my email or a phone call or text or my personal Facebook profile, personal official Facebook page rather, there we go. So please don't mind that. So I myself, understanding that my opinion as alderman would take precedent over my constituents, took a neutral stance. Now, that was heavily criticized by both the applicant and the public, including an individual from Ward 16 called me last week to offer their disappointment in that I took a neutral stance. And I have to say, while I am not the king of Ward 12, I am the elected official. So I cannot tell zoning or any other executive branch what to do. I can make aldermanic requests, absolutely. I did one today for streets regarding an alleyway that needs an entire concrete pad replaced. That's another example of, I don't know it's an issue until you tell me. So I put in an aldermanic request going directly to the commissioner saying, hey, if you'd please get this filled by, by the end of the week or by next week, I would deeply appreciate it because it's been a long while. And he went to his records and saw like, oh, wow, we totally forgot this, and all is well. A lot of times it's a lot of collaboration, right? Because we're co-equal branches of government. I cannot tell streets, hey, stop what you're doing right now and fix this, because I can't compel them to do anything. Or if streets has to fix a water main break or something, and that means they're going to block off a road, I can't tell them you're not blocking off that road, because they're going to say, oh yes we are, and I've got no authority to override them. So it's a game of weight, right, of influence and really reverence in City Hall. It hasn't always been that way. In the past, and I mean in the past being the full timeline for the city of St. Louis, the full collective history of the city of St. Louis, it very much has been that the aldermen of the ward were the kings and queens of the ward, but that's changed. And it's an uneven governance system, right? Because we're a system of checks and balances. And if a legislator has the ability to say, you're going to do this, and I'm exacting my authority over you as a member of the executive branch, well, then it sort of topples that stool I talked about earlier. And likewise, the judicial branch can't come in and say, hey, alderman, you're going to write this law and you're going to approve it, because we'd scoff at them and say, you're not our boss, we are co-equals. And we do bicker. I'll tell you what, I have stopped a meeting to scold a sitting judge in our judicial branch and to remind him that we are co-equal branches, and to sort of put him in his place. He was very out of line, though. It was necessitated. And likewise, the executive branch can't tell us how to operate either. The mayor and the comptroller always will have a seat at the Board of Aldermen, but they're not voting members, and they cannot compel us to do one thing or the other. So it's an interesting balance of collaboration and influence. That's why I took a neutral stance. And doing so put me in line with what we would have done at the library. At the library, in the Modern American Library, we absolutely will immediately remove ourselves and our personal opinions from a situation in the name of impartiality, because that is the best way that we can uplift those that we serve. So had I taken a stance, it would have unfairly, in my opinion, unfairly impacted the decision one way or the other. So that's just a little disclaimer why I took the neutral stance. What zoning did after was after the conditional use hearing, because we had planned a forum on June 22nd to meet with the applicants, they essentially put themselves on hold, because zoning's role in this is to make a recommendation to the Board of Public Services, be it, we do recommend with these conditions, or we do not recommend. Per city ordinance 70982, all medical marijuana dispensaries immediately go to a conditional use hearing because we can further restrict state regulation. We cannot relax it. So in the state of Missouri, medical marijuana dispensaries can only operate between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. The city of St. Louis has the authority to say, well, you're going to operate from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We do not have the authority, or in this case, the supremacy, to say, well, you can operate from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. We would be sued by the state of Missouri. The state of Missouri has supremacy over the city of St. Louis. The federal government has supremacy over the state of Missouri, so on and so forth. And when it comes to medical marijuana dispensaries, it's actually a very interesting sort of study of supremacy clause because it is illegal federally, but the Department of Justice has openly stated numerous times, very formally, taking a very formal stance that they will not be exacting federal supremacy over states' rights to have medical marijuana or recreational marijuana dispensaries, which is the right of the federal government per the US Constitution. So it's really quite interesting from a legislative and legal standpoint. We had the meeting on June 22nd. I, upon the request of my constituents, I always take notes, again, coming from a library background, I took plenty of notes. But I did work up a quick, we, the undersigned constituents of Ward 12, stand in opposition, so on and so forth, petition for everyone to sign. And I did submit that to zoning with the question to zoning of whether or not they would accept it, because they'd sort of put themselves on hold, which is unheard of. They were just delaying their making a decision. I did, so that week, the week of the 17th, or rather the week of the 22nd, so the week that we had the forum. So on the 21st, I had a death in my family. I do believe in duty before self. It's always interesting in maintaining that belief when something such as a death occurs in your immediate family. But I did take a brief bereavement leave that Friday. So I was absent from that board meeting. My voting record will show a slew of absences or absent votes. That is why. And I did not get the document to zoning until the following Monday. So, Monday the, the 28th. So we had the meeting on the 22nd. We got the petition, signatures on the 22nd. I don't have a count for that, but I could get a count if anyone requested it. I submitted on the 28th due to just taking that brief bereavement leave. Zoning had by that point already made a recommendation of due pass with conditions. And I was informed of that on the 28th or 29th, I believe the 29th, by Mary Hartburton, the zoning administrator. And her reasoning was that the city had no legal precedent to decline a legal business going in, and the city views it as a legal business. They did take into account all of the public testimony that I submitted in a formal letter, also noting that I took a neutral stance, and also looked at the voter record for November 2018 Constitutional Amendment 2, wherein 78% of Ward 12 approved Constitutional Amendment 2 or medical marijuana. So they did submit submitted a due pass recommendation with conditions. The ultimate reason why they did that, I was told by the zoning administrator, was because if we keep the situation in control, then we control the terms of the situation. And she said, Alderman, if we declined their application and said they couldn't go in, they would sue the city of St. Louis, and they would have every legal right to sue the city of St. Louis as a legal business in the state of Missouri. And if it went to court, a judge would most likely rule in their favor and subsequently remove any conditions, because the city would lose the right to sort of fine tune or further control or restrict regulations against the business. So she said, there's no legal precedent, or there's no legal reason not to approve this business. And by approving it ourselves, making the recommendation to the Board of Public Services, who makes the ultimate call, the city can control the terms on which they operate, the conditions on which they operate. I was not invited to the Board of Public Services meeting. It conflicted with my legislative duties. It conflicted with a committee meeting hearing. And ultimately that comes down to, I was elected to be a legislator. So it sort of becomes a situation of robbing Peter to pay Paul if I'm skipping meetings or foregoing my legislative duties in order to attend to these other duties. And in the conditional use hearing on the 17th, I was actually double dipping in meetings in that I was on a formal board meeting of the Board of Aldermen on my cell phone and in a conditional use hearing on my Chromebook. And in the recorded video during my testimony, where I'm presenting my report from my constituents, I actually have to pause in the conditional use hearing, turn and vote on the board meeting, and then return to the conditional use hearing. So it becomes this sort of back and forth. I do not know how the Board of Public Services decided to move forward with it. I can make assumptions, but I will decline to do so until I have had the information. I've been watching the official YouTube of the City of St. Louis to see when the meeting goes up, because I would like to see how it was conducted. I would like to see how it was presented and ultimately what the sort of reasoning and decision was. Zoning stance, or the building division stance, was that this was pretty routine, and they have to treat it as any other business with the additional required conditional use hearing per ordinance 70982. So that is where it currently stands. And again, I am the last person to find things out in City Hall. That is because they will not send an email to me directly. They submit everything through paper. Well, we're not in City Hall full time, so I have to pop in. Usually I will pop in 3 or 4 times a week and operate out of my office. I've done some 5 days a week for a few stretches to check my mailbox, but they don't alert our secretaries, and they don't alert me. So we do have a few questions, and I want to scroll up. iPhone, you asked what steps were followed after the in-person meeting at the Hilltop. I did touch on that, but I don't know if that was sufficient clarity. So if you'd like further clarification, just hop on and let me know. And briefly, again, that was to submit a scan. I have the paper record because it's my records, right? To submit a PDF scan of both sides of the petition to Mary Hart Burton. A constituent was CC'd on that email for transparency purposes. But again, my records are all public. I mean, I'm an elected official. So if anyone would like to see that email, I'm happy to forward it. And I have had a few people reach out to say, hey, we want to see that you're doing your job. And I assure you, I am doing my job. But I also appreciate the accountability. Again, you have entrusted with me, or rather, I should say, I am entrusted by you to represent you and to protect and uplift the ward. So if anyone would like to see that, let me know. I will retract that citizen's email though. So I won't make that record. I won't give out that constituent's email for privacy purposes, but you can see my emails unless that constituent gives me the okay. I would be interested in the count. Do we have any figures, excuse me, on the numbers for those for and against? And that was Bill. So Bill, we do. I didn't count the ones from the petition, which were opposition, and I did submit an amended letter to zoning after the meeting, the conditional use hearing, because I have to submit my stuff prior to the meeting, which is at 8:30 in the morning. In that meeting, I did notify Mary Hart Burton as well as zoning that I would be submitting an amended with strike-throughs and signatures and all that. So, and that was because I got some late minute support and late minute opposition emails. So I wanted to make sure that reflected in the letter. So let me do a quick little count. So on the June 22nd petition, we, the undersigned constituents of Ward 12, stand in opposition to the proposed medical marijuana dispensary seeking to occupy 7350 Gravois. I just lost count. Twenty-eight constituents signed that, saying that they were against it. Now there were duplicates. So the numbers are not set in stone. Where's my public stances letter? So in the letter that I submitted to Mary Hart Burton, the zoning administrator, I had 9 individuals reach out to me directly by either phone call, text, or message, email. 9 opposed, 17 supported, and 1 remained neutral. We also had a woman in Afton, Missouri, who supported it, but that's not entered into our record. These are only Ward 12 constituents and not necessarily registered voters. I don't check voter registration. I do check residency. So 9 opposed, 17 supported, 1 neutral. In the amended letter I submitted to Mary Hart Burton at 11:09 a.m., June 17th, 2021. Then there's the additional 28 who signed the petition, but again, there were duplicates, so it wouldn't be a firm number. It would be, I'd have to go through and strike out those to get an actual number. There was an instance where, oh, you're welcome, Bill. There was an instance where there was a next door post where it had like 200 comments and they were mostly in support. And I can't take those into account. I can use as an example of saying like, well, per a social media post, this post received general support for it, but I can't necessarily enter that into record saying like this constituent made this stance, directly to me, so on and so forth. It needs to be communicated to me. I door knocked. I was doing a door knock of Steins to survey about potentially converting it from a 2-way to a 1-way. In that case, I just tacked it on saying, oh, hey, while I have you, what's your stance on this? If you'd like to take a stance, you are never required to. We had a Princeton Heights Neighborhood Association meeting, informal meeting at Willmore Park. I met with the Ward 12 constituents. And I said, hey, how do you feel about this? As a rule, when I report these to zoning, or if I ever have to submit a letter with constituents' addresses to any outside organization or any other branch of government, I will always submit it as the block. So for example, I would say Bill Stevens of the 4500, 4900 block of Finkman stands neutral, or so on and so forth. I will not give out your official address unless compelled to by the Attorney General. So that's a way for me to maintain your privacy and confidentiality. If you're sworn into a meeting, such as at the conditional use hearing, they will make you state your address for public record. I don't control that. I'm much more comfortable just kind of saying the block that you live on, but that's sort of how that goes. So we had a question from Donna. What are the conditions attached to the due pass decision? And Donna, I don't know. Again, zoning does not, or the Board of Public Services for that matter, does not provide me with that information. I'm happy to request it. And that's why I was waiting for that meeting to show up on the City of St. Louis's website, excuse me, because it would be stated in the Board of Public Services meeting. And that's all public record as well, so you can also request that. And if they say, we're not going to provide it, then you sunshine it, which is your right as a civilian. You have a right to know what your elected officials and representative officials are doing. So sorry, we just got a legislative update. So I can send over, Donna, the ordinance 70982, which outlines the various conditions and also requires the conditional use hearing for medical marijuana dispensaries. And it it sort of depends on various things. Everything from the location that they're seeking to occupy to public input to XYZ. I can also request from zoning or from the Board of Public Services the information that they have with their due pass recommendation. If you would like, you need merely let me know. Bill, you're welcome again. And then, was there a follow-up regarding a possible daycare nearby? I never received a follow-up, nor has anything come across my desk regarding a conditional use hearing for that. So it was going to be, and please correct me if I'm wrong, a home daycare, I believe, somewhere in Germania. That is a state level license. So they don't, again, this really comes back to they don't notify me of these things or provide me with that information. I would have to look at the state registry for it and sort of figure out. And that's something that we used to do all the time at the Early Childhood Outreach team, where I was the senior most member prior to being elected at St. Louis Public Library. So let me jot those down right quick. So don't mind the pause. Conditions of. And there's some conditions, Ms. Donna, that automatically go into effect. Like, for example, in the city of St. Louis, they can't have iconography like a giant pot leaf. They're not supposed to. They can go to, I mean, they would be called back to the Board of Public Services for a revocation hearing. So there are certain conditions that are just automatically in place. The ones such as the hours and whatnot, that's more sort of case by case. And again, it can be frustrating when you have 10,000 constituents relying on you and other divisions of city government do not actively inform you of things going on in your own ward. I mean, a lot of times it's a game of, I receive a compliment from a member of the public saying like, oh, hey, thanks for getting this alleyway fixed. And you're like, you never told me there was an alleyway problem, but I'm glad it's fixed. And I send it over to streets for due diligence because it was actually all them. So as I stated at the June 22nd meeting, communication City Hall absolutely needs to be streamlined and needs an overhaul. We are working on that, but City Hall can be slow. Not just City Hall, but bureaucracy can be slow. So per another constituent, hello Annette, they are active and they had to go through a conditional use process, which also highlights that I was never notified of a conditional use hearing for a daycare. I've received 2 to date. One was the medical marijuana dispensary, which was the first. And the other is for a business, a liquor store that's going into the old family video. They've already been approved. They were approved prior to my election, but they want to put interior and exterior signs. They just want to put up a sign. And when I say that City Hall's on top of it, I mean that I did watch a Board of Public Services meeting that was archived just to get a sense of how they operate and whatnot. And a business had been called in, a convenience store had been called in for a revocation hearing because they posted printed signs on 8.5 by 11 paper in their window. And that was a violation of their conditional use. So they take that incredibly seriously. So any interior exterior alterations have to get approved. And then if you get one approved and you say, well, actually, we want to do this sign instead, or we want to also do this, you have to go back to a conditional use hearing. But regarding a daycare, I have had nothing come across my desk regarding daycares yet. They have been brought up in education youth matters committees, because again, my background is in early childhood services through libraries, specializing in ages 0 to 5. So that's always a facet that I bring to the committee, but otherwise, I've got no idea. I have no idea where this daycare is located. Nothing's been communicated to me. And if need be, I'm happy to investigate that as well. But as it stands, I don't have sufficient information to speak to that. I'm not surprised they went through a conditional use hearing, though, because it falls under Health and Human Services. So do we have any more? Okay. Hey there. So the 78% of the ward approved Constitutional Amendment 2 in November 2018. There were 3 constitutional amendments proposed, if you'll recall, because there were 3 different models for medical marijuana. And Constitutional Amendment 2 was this sort of, was the one that I supported. So I did vote in favor of Constitutional Amendment 2. One was a weird monopoly grab. Someone wanted to, thank you on that. Someone wanted to really capitalize on medical marijuana and sort of make themselves a monopoly. That was the third option. That was very heavily rejected by statewide voters. And then the second, I can't quite recall, but it was some sort of hybrid. So that's where I got that number. I did submit that to zoning as well, because let me go to my drive. Because they would have pulled it anyway, and they'd probably already pulled it. Because whenever we try to survey the public, the most accurate and the best survey is presidential elections, actually, because we get the highest voter turnout in presidential elections. After that, it's municipal elections, because you get a fair turnout for municipal local elections. And then after that is special elections. And we do have a special election coming up this fall regarding schools. And you might recall with ward reduction, it was proposed last legislative session that ward reduction be put onto the presidential ballot this past November as a non-binding resolution. And all that serves to do is survey the public, because again, some 60 to 70,000 voters voted in the presidential election. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the mayoral election. Some 60 to 70,000 voters voted in the mayoral election. So you tend to have higher turnout with presidential. And occasionally they'll do a non-binding resolution to do that. Have I frozen up? Can you all hear me? Okay, thank you. My screen very suddenly froze, so I just wanted to make sure. So Christina, that was what that statement was, because that's the best survey that I have. And someone suggested, why didn't the city, or questioned, why didn't the city send a postcard or a letter to everyone? And that's just cost prohibition. That would have to come out of my own personal funds, personal being campaign funds. And to give an idea of, during the campaign, I sent out 3,500 mailers, or about 3,000 mailers to households, to reach about 3,500 constituents. To send out 3,000 mailers bulked in with other campaigns, because you try to kind of coordinate with other campaigns to do as large of an order as you can, because it lowers your overall. Nevertheless, it cost me about $1,200 to send it just to 3,000. To do 10,000 of my own run, and we'll knock that down. We'll say 9,000. We'll cut out 1,000, duplicate voters in a household, so on and so forth. To send out 9,000, I mean, that could easily be $5,000 worth of campaign funds. And I'm not actively fundraising because I don't know if I'm running again, first and foremost, and you all deserve to know that. But I also don't know if it's appropriate at the tail end of a pandemic that we're all still feeling the struggles of, for me to ask people to donate to my campaign account. 1 second, we have a guest. Hello, welcome back, Jen. So that just comes down to funding. But ultimately, that's where my 78% of the ward is in favor statement came from. And it was that 78% of the ward approved Constitutional Amendment 2 specifically. Okay, do we have any other questions? Again, everyone is welcome to hop off and unmute themselves and ask a question, or you can put it in the chat. The chat is not recorded, or at least previously it hasn't been recorded on the video itself. That's why I read the question out loud and try to forego using names. I do receive a download of the chat with timestamps, but I do not upload that. It is public record, but I don't necessarily make it immediately available because it would identify participants. So anything else? If not, I'm going to hop back over. Yep, we got something. Hold on. So where are we with the dispensary? We are, I believe, I assume, and again, I'm apprehensive to assume because then it will turn out that I'm wrong. But as I understand, the Board of Public Services most likely approved it to occupy the Steak and Shake. It was surely with conditions. Again, there's always conditions attached, such as signage and so on and so forth, per city ordinance. And again, as zoning explained to me, it's the city's way of controlling the situation and having the ability to put conditions on it. So as best I understand, it will be occupying. I don't know when. The interior will need some pretty substantive updates in order to be within state regulation. For example, they have to have a bank grade safe that is set into the foundation itself. It cannot be bolted, and it has to be within its own locked room, a fire safe locked room. They have to have a disposal facility because none of the, they can't just like throw out old products. So if they have any product that they have that expires or they have to get rid of, they have to dispose of it on site and they have to destroy it. And there's a few methods of destroying it. I believe the most common, as I understand, is that they chip it with other refuse. And then I believe they may even bleach it. So like the health department, if the health department, for example, is compelling a restaurant to throw out food, sometimes they'll pour bleach on it to make it absolutely, destroyed. So I do know that there will have to be alterations to the site. And then Jen, we can access the recording. I will drop the link again at the official YouTube. So that's linked to my YouTube channel, rather the Ward 12 Alderman YouTube channel. It's currently linked to my official email. But I do plan when I eventually vacate office, whenever that may be, if YouTube is still around, to make it available to the incoming aldermen. Again, with ward reduction, we've got no idea what it's going to look like. So this very well could be my only 2 years to serve Ward 12 in this capacity. I will always find an avenue for public service. So for the time being, while I'm in office, I'm uploading everything to this YouTube channel. And actually, Jen, let me, well, you can click link. It's right there. Okay. Do you have any other questions or? Okay, perfect. And then Jen, I'll be putting it on my official Facebook page as well. And I also plan during the summer recess, which is coming up, to update my website to no longer be a campaign website, but to be a Ward 12 website. And perhaps even I might be able to work with IT to get it on my official government page. They're pretty apprehensive to let us do that. But I might be able to get them to put a YouTube link to my official channel because it is public record. I'm jotting that down too, as well as a note for Annette. Daycare. And then hopefully IT is amenable to that. That is one department I wish I had more authority over. So if there are any more questions, I'm happy to come back to them. But I do want to announce that we have an upcoming state rep in wards 11 and 12 public meeting. It is coming up not tomorrow, but next Thursday, July 15th from 6 to 9 p.m. At Perennial Artisan Ales, which is located at 8125 Michigan Ave, St. Louis, Missouri, 63111 in Ward 11. And it says 6 to 9. We had one in Bevo as well that I was invited to with wards 13 and 14. But because Donna Behringer was there, they invited me as well, since Donna Behringer mostly covers Princeton Heights. And it did not go until 9 p.m. So there's also food. They've got sort of finger food and so on and so forth. It was really quite informative. It's an update from your state reps. It'll be state reps Steve Butts and Bridget Walsh-Moore, and myself. Alderwoman Martin is unavailable that evening and cannot make it. But I will be reaching out to her to see if I can't provide an update on behalf of Ward 11 as well. So that is, again, this coming Thursday, July 15th, 6 to 9 p.m., Perennial Artisan Ales. And then finally, I'm trying to include little PSAs at the end of these. So did you know? You can actually pay your taxes ahead of time with the City of St. Louis, be it your property tax, be it your water, sewer, refuse bills, so on and so forth. And all you have to do is contact the collector of revenue or the relevant division and send the money. Some people have it automated to send from their bank once a month. Some people just send in piecemeal checks as they can. Some people do a giant lump sum all at once and say, okay, I'm putting this much money to, my personal property tax. And the collector of revenue's office, the relevant division within it, will hold on to it until it's due and then apply it to your bill. And if you pay over, say you've got a $100 water, sewer, trash bill every quarter, where zone 1. So they've got 3 zones for water, sewer, trash. We're zone 1, which means we're in the first quarter, and then so we're in January, March, April, July, so on and so forth. It just sort of rotates around. So if you owe $100 on it once a quarter and you send in $200 ahead of time, they'll put the $100 towards your current bill, hold on to the rest of it until your next bill, and so on and so forth. So you have to pay your taxes. If your property tax skyrocketed this year, I understand all of our properties went up about 9.6% per the city assessor's office. You can always reach out to my office or to the city assessor's office and request a personalized reassessment where they'll come out to your property and do a reassessment if you feel that you've been overtaxed. Because the goal of taxes is not to overtax you and it's not to undertax you. It is to appropriately tax you. So, so it's not changing your taxes. It's just to help soften the blow when you do receive that tax bill. So individuals that are on a fixed income, such as a retirement account or Social Security, can send in bit by bit, no matter how much you can send in. I mean, it's you, the taxpayer, that dictates how much you pay ahead and how often or frequently you pay ahead. And it sort of allows you to pay it over the year or however you like, so that you don't get a giant bill all at once. And they'll also work with you. They're incredibly amenable to, and really any city division is incredibly amenable to working with citizens that are trying to remain compliant. The city is full of human beings as well, City Hall. So we understand that it's not going to work out perfectly every time, but we're going to work with you to help get you there. And I will say the Collector of Revenue's office is incredibly amenable to working with people as they, to the extent that they legally can. So, so that's just my little tidbit. Do you know if this summer indoors or outdoors. Donna, I don't quite understand the question. I may have sort of out-talked your question a bit. I apologize. If you can further clarify that.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Donna. Hi.
Okay, yeah, I didn't realize it said summer. I was talking about the meeting, the thing at the
Perennial.
perennial artisanal. Yeah, if that's indoors or outdoors, just asking for COVID, want to know what to expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate you asking that because again, the city has put out that advisory that requests that citizens wear masks in mixed meeting spaces where they don't know if everyone's been vaccinated. So as I understand from State Rep Steve Butts, it will be outdoors. I believe that Perennial recently did a big renovation and sort of expanded their outdoor capacity. So that one should be outdoors, weather permitting. And I believe his band is going to play. So Rep Butts is in a band because he asked me, I know, right? He asked me and Alderwoman Martin and Bridget Walsh-Moore, state rep for the 83rd, if we sang or if we had any songs we wanted to sing, and we all declined. We will not be singing, but that might be a facet of it. So it should be outdoors. I do not believe there will be a virtual option. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then did I adequately answer since I got to answer your question earlier?
Yes, you did.
Okay. I just wanted to follow up. Can an event reminder be placed on Facebook? Jamie, is that for the perennial?
For the announcement thing, yes, or the perennial thing, yes.
Yes. Okay. So absolutely, I'm going to work that up tonight, either tonight or tomorrow, and put it through my official Facebook page. After I check to see if there isn't already one floating out there. I was not a organizer of the event, but rather hold on, let me do this. Sorry. Okay, you all deserve to see me too, and we've already gone through the agenda. So I'm going to make sure that one's not already out there, that Steve didn't already make one up. And then if he hasn't, I will make one up. I believe he and Bridget sent postcards to all of their constituents. They have a budget to do so. They have a mailing budget. I do not. I get 200 stamps a month, and that's my mailing budget. But to send a letter to everyone in Princeton Heights, that's not covered by Bridget Walsh-Moore. So everyone under Donna Behringer, I would have to ask for stamps from other alders. And I mean, Joe Vaccaro has like 13,000 stamps. So that's not unheard of, but I will work up an event. It'll be through my official Facebook page. And if there's already an event, I will ask to be made a co-host and I will share it through my official Facebook page. And I'll also announce it on Twitter because there's a few constituents that utilize Twitter and Nextdoor. I'll do Nextdoor as well, but not Facebook. Okay. Bill, excellent question. Did I discuss the threat to myself and my fiance? We were both threatened in the agenda. And I did move the agenda down and then I took it down altogether. So I apologize, Bill. I didn't see that beforehand. So, but I absolutely meant to follow up on that. So the medical marijuana dispensary was a very contentious situation. And it was one that until the KSDK interview, which was very last minute, the gentleman contacted me, I mean, essentially an hour before the interview itself or so. Until the KSDK interview, the situation kept mounting in severity. And I did receive a non-violent threat against myself and my fiance. I don't have any reason to believe that it was intended to be violent. It was essentially a threat of besmirching, right? That again, incorporated myself, my friends, and my family. The worry with it was and we didn't take any action against it. I will not respond to it, nor will I respond to that constituent, but it was well calculated. They detailed exactly what they were going to do. They detailed the sort of grievances they had against me, if you will, and sort of there was some paranoia that was sort of present there. So there's a question of rationality. And frankly, you can hate on me all you want. Does it affect me quite deeply? Absolutely. I'm coming from a public library and I ran to represent you and to help make your life better. And I always tell people, officially or otherwise, that being a public official is on top of the world, a feeling of being on top of the world when you're successful. When you succeed and you can help make the city better, it's the best feeling in the world. But when you fail, and there's a whole lot more failures in public service than not, it feels like the world's ending. And the world doesn't end, it just feels like it does. But if I fail as a legislator, 300,000 people suffer. So that's a very heavy mantle of responsibility. And it's one that I knew I was getting myself into. But you can hate on me all you want. I received homophobic slurs during this time. People absolutely came for the fact that I'm an openly gay official. People attacked my fiance for also being in the LGBT community. And that's, you roll with the punches and take a few. The threat, the details of which I will not go into, sort of necessitated drawing a bit of a boundary with the public. So I will not be responding to messages sent to me as an official to my personal Facebook page or my personal messenger. I have to draw that line there. I'm also no longer responding to inquiries from the public that tag my personal profile page on the neighborhood pages. So I might be able to give a quick answer, but I have to direct you back to my official email or my official Facebook page or an official channel of communication. That's for my protection and my privacy. And my privacy was just breached because of a medical marijuana dispensary situation. So, I sacrifice quite a bit for my public, and I know it's not always apparent, and I know it is what I signed up for. My fiance did not sign up for it, and it was a wholly inappropriate situation. That, again, in an escalating situation where things are getting more and more tense, we have to consider that it might become more, especially if there's a paranoia-fueled smear campaign against me and my fiance. And it was enough to warrant concern. So that's what that was. I'm not releasing who did it, and I'm not releasing if there's been any follow-up or any further concern with it. I've not involved any other officials or taken any steps within City Hall because I can request protection in City Hall. I can say, I don't want this constituent in here. I don't think it necessitates that because I think that should be our last resort. But alders have absolutely been physically assaulted. Alderwoman Ingrassia was punched in the face by a constituent whom she told not to blow off fireworks. Not this year, but I believe last. It was only, 30 years ago that it was not infrequent for there to be car bombings in the city of St. Louis. And at the end of the day, I am a minority elected official in what can be a sometimes hostile ward. And that is exactly what I signed up for. I truly, truly work to represent all of my constituents equally and to remain neutral and impartial. This absolutely does play into my ultimate decision of will I run again or will I pursue higher office or what does my public service look like? So that's that update. And it is rough. It is rough. I'm young enough that I can burn my candle at both ends, and you all deserve a representative that can do that. So, and I truly, I really do regret when I fail. And I will fail. I'm only human. I will absolutely fail in this role. And I will not always be calm and professional either. I appreciate you saying that in the chat, because I used to be someone that wore their heart on their sleeve. So I've had to work very hard on that, but I do deserve my relationship, my safety, and to some degree, my privacy. So that's sort of the line in the sand that I have to draw at the moment. And I would like to revisit this at the end of next quarter. So that said, that's all I've got. I've kept you all for an hour and a half. I do apologize. I get a little verbose, but if there's any questions or any concerns or anything that I should be aware of, please let me know. We've got streets coming through soon to do some major, not just potholes, which are considered minor, but some major updates. We've got an alleyway on Nagel, Nagel and Schollmeyer, I think, that we are finally getting that alley back. We're replacing the entire concrete pad. We're also doing some concrete pad replacements on Coronado and somewhere down Park Ridge. We're fixing some broken concrete pads. I'm looking into the Germania and Sharp Light. There's a greater issue with the electrical infrastructure at Germania and Sharp. And it's also affecting Morgan Ford and Germania. So we're trying to figure that out. Ameren is still working on their proposal for Loughborough and Mackland. We did have a forum about that, which is also on that YouTube channel. Be sure to like and subscribe. Just kidding. So we're sort of waiting on that. That's going to be a much longer project than what I would like, but hopefully we're on the track to get the Ameren project figured out. And otherwise, that's all I've got. So thank you all for joining. I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes and field any questions or anything else. But otherwise, have a great night. I'm always available if you want to chat. And I will see you all, I suppose, next month. I won't really have much of an update legislatively, but some people have requested that I continue doing these during recess, so I will continue to do so. Okay. And hearing none, I'm going to take it. Oh, I'm sorry, Katie, did you?
I just wanted to say thank you for everything that, for every wackadoo constituent you have with extreme points of view and maybe some issues they need to deal with. Like, there are tons of us who love and appreciate everything that you do and see how hard you're working. And although, you're human and you may fail, we know it's not going to be for lack of trying and work ethic. So I just wanted to take a second to appreciate you.
Of course, and thank you. I deeply appreciate that. And frequently people ask, "Oh, is it everything you thought it would be?" And it really is, because it's just like fielding reference questions. I got an email about what's the city code for slaughtering chickens in backyards. That's literally just a reference question. So it's really, the bulk of it is just knowing who to direct it to, or who's the appropriate person, and also having the wisdom of knowing when I need to really lean into sort of my aldermanic authority. I've tried to really empower the executive branch and the commissioners to operate without my approval or without, having to come to me and whatnot. And that was strategic on my part, in that now whenever I go to commissioners, they love me and they immediately do what I ask, because I'm not asking them to. I'm just, hey, if you get a moment, I always appreciate what you do, forestry commissioner. Like, would you come out, if you get a moment, would you come out and meet with me about this tree? And he drops what he's doing and comes out and meets with me, So it really goes back to, you attract more flies with honey than vinegar. And that's why, when I put in a request, it usually gets filled. So, but I appreciate that. And again, I signed up for this. We always knew that threats would eventually come, or the homophobic comments would eventually come. That's okay. Just not when they're directed at anyone other than myself. So I appreciate that, Katie. Thank you. And let me go ahead and turn off the recording. So we are stopping the recording in 3, 2, 1.